If you'd like to learn how to make an idle animation for a tool that your player is holding, keep watching and I'll show you exactly how to do it. Hi everybody and welcome to Roblox Snippets. In this video today we're going to create a idle animation for your players if they're holding a sword, which could be any tool. I said tool in the video because you could obviously change the animation that you want to create to reflect whichever tool you're holding, but a sword is a pretty good one. Now all I've done at the moment is I've added a sword in from the toolbox here, so straight into the starter pack over here, and the game is running at the moment. However, if you go into Toolbox and under Marketplace and Models, just type in here sword and do a quick search. And I use this one here by Jerryman down the bottom. It's got no scripts in it, so just make sure it's got no scripts. Some of these have scripts and we're not sure what they do, and we just need this as a bit of a model really, and then you can choose whatever sword you want, but make sure it has no scripts in it. You can then click on your starter pack over here and then insert that, and it'll go in here and you'll have the same sword that I'm using here to work with. So if we, like this is running at the moment, if I click on the sword to equip it, you'll notice that it comes up with the standard way to hold the sword. Okay, so that is the standard animation, which doesn't really do anything while you have a sword equipped, and I can run around with that and that's fine. However, while he's standing still, he's just doing this. Okay, and we're going to change that and make it a little bit more interesting. And when we unequip the sword, it goes away. Alright, so we'll stop the game there. In order for us to make an animation, we need a dummy to work with, but we will use a copy of your own avatar in order to make this animation. So up the top here, under the Avatar tab, if you come in here, you'll find a button here called Rig Builder. So go ahead and left click on that, and underneath this you should see Generate Rig, and up the top here, My Avatar. So we're going to import a copy of your avatar. So go ahead and click on that. Make sure you're in the workspace and face your camera down slightly and click on My Avatar. And you should see that a rig, not your avatar name, gets inserted here. And if I click on this and just move it a little bit closer, and we'll rotate it around and come in, I get a copy of my avatar that's been placed into the workspace. Alright, now we'll get rid of this rig word over the top of our avatar's head, and to do that, just expand the rig in the Explorer window, come down to Humanoid and left click on Humanoid. Then in the properties you'll find Display Distance Type with Viewer written next to it. It's a drop down, so just choose None, and that word should disappear from above the rig's head, and then you can zip him back up again. The next step is to get hold of our sword, which we put down here in the starter pack. I'll just move over to here. So we'll take we'll actually duplicate this sword. So come up and just copy it, and then right click on it and cut that, and we're going to paste it into the workspace. So paste into, and mine has appeared way up in the sky somewhere, which will make it quite difficult to work out where that is. So what we'll do is, see how it's got a position here? Come down to our spawn location, so just click on spawn. If this happens to you, it doesn't pop up, and find its position. So down in, if we have a look at the position here, C-frame, it's right at the middle. Alright, so what we could do is come up to our sword here and just click on 0, 0, 0 and hit enter. Sorry, we'll need to do that on the handle inside of this. So open it up and 0, 0, 0, and it should now move to our spawn. So click on spawn and hit F, and our sword is sitting here ready for us to work with. Right, we'll move it over near our player. Now, when we're attaching this tool or this sword to our player, we're not actually using this part here, which is a tool. So you'll see here class name tool. We're actually using the handle part that's inside of this and this mesh part. So all we need is to take the handle and drag it up into the workspace for a start. And where we had our sword tool, just go ahead and delete that. And we're going to change the name of handle now to be called, we'll just call it a dummy sword. So we know that when we're finished with it, we can simply delete it and get rid of it. All right. So our next thing to do is we want to attach this sword to our rig, and we want to do it in a way, or in the hand, where it would normally, remember his hand just shoots up in front of him holding the sword up, so we want to attach it to his right hand over here. Now to do that, select your sword and bring it over near his hand, and we will want to rotate this now around 90 degrees. So we're going to make use of, under model up the top here, these checked boxes quite a bit during this video to make sure we're moving very specifically, and this one is set up correctly where it's ticked at 90 degrees. Then we select rotate, and we're going to rotate the sword around like this. So now it's in line with his hand. And if we now move down, or I zoom in here, we want to then rotate it close to around this way like this, so that it's in line with his hand, and come up to our move tool. Now in this case, we don't want to move studs just at the moment. We'd want to move this up so that we can get it inside of his hand how he would normally hold it. So you'll need to rotate around this way and then move the sword over and into his hand, and just have a look and see if you can get it positioned just between his thumb and fingers, and so that the end of the sword comes out at the bottom of his hand slightly like this. So it should look like that. Okay. Next we want to attach the sword now to the player's, or to the rig's right hand. So over in your Explorer window, find the rig and expand it, and then scroll down through all of the parts here till you find right hand. Alright, so when you find right hand, left click on that so that it's selected. Then we're going to come up, and if you're not in Model tab up the top, click on the Model tab and come over to Constraints, and left click on Constraints, and we're going to create a weld. So you could just click on Create, which is usually a weld. However, on the drop down, if you drop down and come down and find Weld in here, left click on that, and you should see this little welding icon that pops up. Come to the sword, so it doesn't matter exactly where you click on this, but you know, down close to the handle is good. So if you want to come around and click on the handle of the sword, so that red line is representing where it's going to attach to, and then left click. Now if you've done that correctly, you should see a weld that comes up in the player's right hand here. Okay, so it's quite important that you select the right hand first and then weld it to this part here. And now that is a part of our rig, and we are ready to animate with our rig with our sword in his hand. So just once again, zip up your rig here, and we're good to move on with the next step. Now that we have our avatar ready to use their sword and it's attached, we're going to have a look at the animation editor. So in the workspace view, so you'll like this, come up to the plugins, avatar tab up the top, and over on the right you should find an animation editor. So go ahead and left click on animation editor, and you should notice that we have some extra windows come up. So there's this one and this one, and it's a bit crowded at the moment. So what we'll do is, our output window we don't need at the moment, so you can go ahead and close it. And just for the moment as well, you can close the Explorer and the Properties window to give us a bit more space. And down the bottom, if you move over the edge of the animation editor, just drag down a little bit if you like. If you can, I can't seem to move any more. I'll just move my screen. And that's about as good as I'll get it just at the moment. Alright, now Well, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the animation editor, where you can find things, so that then we should be able to move smoothly through animation. The first thing you'll see is select a rig to animate or create a new animation. So obviously we're going to select this one here, and a blue box will come up around our rig. So left click on that and you should have this box come up here. Give your animation a name. So I'm going to call this my sword idle animation, and I'm going to put at the end here video, because I'm making it for the video. And then go ahead and left click on create, and everything should disappear, and now you should have a timeline here with a scrubber bar that moves through here, and the time is up to 1 second, from 0 to 1 second. And then we have this section over here with a few buttons in it. In order for us to actually animate our rig, we're going to use this button over here called IK. Alright, so move over to the left next to where rig is written here, and left click on the IK button, and this separate window will pop up over on the left. And there's another button here, enable IK. So left click on enable IK, and you should find that all of your body parts for your rig pop up here in a list. And I'm just going to slide this up if I can. It's not letting me move anything here, but that's okay. We don't need to look at this too much just at the moment anyway. Alright, once you have this up here, we're just going to examine a couple of things in here before we start animating. And the first one is up here, this IK mode, and you'll notice we have body part and we have full body. So looking at our rig, if I come down and select in the list here, we're going to select the right hand, which is the one holding the sword, and I then click on the move tool. Right, we're in body part mode. So if I move this, any of these arrows, the sword should move with my hand, and it's just moving my body part at the moment. Alright, so if I move it forward or backwards, etc., and the limb that is attached to my hand is just following suit. Alright, now one thing that you should get used to is using some shortcut keys, and the first one is Command or Control Z to undo anything that you do, because sometimes you'll put things in a place where you don't want them, and it's easiest just to go Command or undo. Command or Control Z to undo back to your original pose. So that was the body part. If we change this to full body now, and I do the same thing, you'll notice my entire body will move with where I'm dragging the body part to. Alright? So they are very distinctive things to make sure you select the right one when you're starting to do your animation. So I'll undo that back to where we were and go back to body part. So on body part, you may have noticed there's no pins down here, but on full body we have these pins that appear down here, which means I can pin parts that I don't want to move. For example, if I click on left foot and pin the left foot, and I also pin the right foot and then move, you'll notice my feet get frozen to the ground, and my character just bends right out of shape. Alright, which looks pretty crazy, and we don't want that just at the moment, but this is very useful. So we'll turn off those pins and come back to our body part and make sure we've undone back to being ready to start animating. Alright, the last thing we'll talk about before we actually start adding things in is if I move my hand again just slightly, down the bottom here you'll see that we have these little diamond shapes pop up, and they are called, and I'll just make this a bit bigger, there we go. They are called keyframes. So in this case I have made a change and it's recorded my right hand here. That's where I wanted to start. So if I move this out here, that is a keyframe, and we make our animation up from keyframes. So if this was my starting position and I wanted my player's hand at the end of it, so if I move this scrubber here, this blue line, halfway through, and then move my hand up like this, you'll notice we get another keyframe here. Alright, and if I was then to take the first keyframe, the original one, right click on that and copy it, come to the end and paste that in here, so paste keyframe. Right, we can play that animation and you'll see he moves back and forward between those two positions. So I'll just put loop on, which is at the end here, click on this and then play, and you'll see he's moving from my original pose, which is down low, to the second one, which is up high, back to the original, and repeating over and over. And this is the nature of an idle animation. Alright, so I'll go ahead and stop that playing, and we're going to delete these keyframes now. So if you click on them so they're selected in blue, you can right click on them and come up to delete selected, or you can just hit X or delete on your keyboard and you can get rid of those. Alright, my delete doesn't seem to work there, so I'm just going to right click and delete those and bring our scrubber way back to the beginning so that we can make a start. Alright, our character should now be in the original position that we entered the animation in, and we're ready to actually start animating to create the idle pose. Just before we start moving our character's parts, come down to the three dots next to sword animation down here, left click and click on save. Alright, now just by clicking save, it'll create a box for us where it's going to keep our animations in, and if you were to save the project and shut it down, sometimes if you come back and you haven't saved, your avatar will be all out of shape and it just sort of doesn't work properly for, I'm not sure why, but if you save, that tends to prevent things. Alright, so let's now move our character a little bit. So in the workspace, just right click and drag and use your ASD W keys to move around to the side of your avatar. Over here in the Manage IK, go ahead and click on the full body over here, and we want to go ahead and pin the left foot. Alright, so find the left foot and click on the pin so that it turns blue. Then come up and select the right foot, and we're going to move this forward by 7 studs. So if we change this up here so that it says 7, and then click on the box next to it, alright, you should be able to grab the blue handle and then very slowly move it away from the character until his foot moves out in front of him, like such. Alright, uncheck the box and then change this to 1, hit enter, and then take the green arrow and we want to move his foot down just 1 stud, so just a little bit like that. And you should see his foot is out in front of him now and level on the ground. So forward 7, down 1. Alright, next we want to unpin the left foot, so come over and unpin it, and we now want to pin the right foot. So while it's selected up here, left click and pin that. And we're going to rotate the left foot, so come back to the left foot, and we're still in the full body mode up the top here. We're going to rotate this 45 degrees, alright, away from the body. So if I rotate around this way, away from the body means out this way. So select your rotate tool, and because we're going to move up the top here, uncheck rotate, change this one up here to 45 and hit enter, and then using the green wheel, left click and hold and drag until it moves like this and let it go, and his foot should have turned out like this. Alright, next we want to lock the lower torso, so up here, lower torso, come up and pin that, right? And we're going to rotate the upper torso 20 degrees forward. So in other words, we want to move back around where we were, like this, so we're on the side, and we're going to now left click on the upper torso, which if you scroll down, if you can't see it, upper torso, and we want to rotate this 20 degrees forward. So uncheck rotate up here and change this to be 20 and hit enter, and then using the red wheel just move it until you see it do this, like that. Right, and while that is still there, we're going to left click on the head part now and rotate it backwards. So just like that. Alright, so his body's slightly forward and his head's looking straight ahead. Okay. Now go ahead and unpin the lower torso. And select the upper torso. And this time we're going to move it backwards. Alright, so we're going to move it back this way by 2 studs, I think it is, that I decided on. So up the top here, uncheck move, change this to 2 and hit enter. Select your move tool and with the blue handle, left click and drag it just until it moves for you, like that. And let it go. Alright, now we're going to change the mode. So up the top, come up to the body part mode, and we want to now select the right hand, okay, and move it, so we want to move it forward, and we won't worry about how many studs it is just at the moment, so you can uncheck this, and I want you to move it out in front of him as it would be when he normally would, so up sort of level with his shoulder. So just drag it up so it's sort of straight out in front of him. And if you come around in the front, you'll notice that it is sort of tilted inwards a little bit, which is okay, and sort of tilted away from him at the moment. So if it's tilted like this, that's fine. We left click on the rotate here and we'll change rotate, so uncheck it to 45 degrees, and I want you to rotate away from the body, so the red one, grab it and just rotate it down until it moves like this, so it's just moved forward slightly. Alright, next we're going to come to full body mode again, and we want to now pin the upper right arm. Okay, so find the upper left arm. So pin the upper left arm, which is here. Left upper arm, we want to pin that. And we're going to move the left hand up to about 90 degrees. So if we select our left hand down here, and the move tool, spin your view around, and we're going to now move with the blue handle, left click and drag it, and he should just move, like bend his elbow up to about 90 degrees, or perhaps a little bit lower if you like, so something like that. Okay, maybe a little bit higher, it sort of looks a bit odd where he is at the moment, so just move it up a little bit more to perhaps about there. Okay, now unpin his upper arm. Right, so here, come over and unpin that one, and move his left hand 4 studs towards his body. Alright, so round like this, we're going to take his left hand, which is selected here, and we're going to move it inwards by 4. So come up here and change our studs to 4 and hit enter, and then using the red handle, left click it and just push it in until it moves for us. Whoops, went a little bit too far. So when that happens, Control Z to undo, and we'll try again. Just move it slightly. Having a little bit of trouble getting to, went too far. But we basically want it to be just coming in a little bit. And I would say we should be on body part, sorry. So change to body part mode and move it in by 4 studs. So it just so that it's come in just a little bit. It's having trouble moving that precisely. I'll turn that off and we'll just try to move just in like this. Right? And lastly, right, come around, rotate around here, and we just want to make sure that our head, after moving all around, sorry, move down here, our head is facing forwards. So it looks like it is. If it's sort of gone out of whack, then you can grab the head and rotate it so that it's looking straight forward. All right. So if you grab the head and come to rotate, uncheck the box so you can just finally move his head to where you want it, and perhaps down a little bit so that he looks like he's in action mode and ready to go. Right, and that is our first pose ready to go, and we're ready to then move on and make our second pose. Okay, so our first pose took a lot of moving around and things. The second one, thankfully, is not as complicated. But before we start moving our character, this is the first pose, so we want to move from this pose to the next one. So for that reason, down here in the animation editor, grab your scrubber and move it, the blue line, over to the big line just before 0.15. Alright, and this is where we will create our second pose now. So once you've moved the scrubber, once again just come over to the three dots and click on Save, so that you can keep your animation sort of saved and up to date. And we're going to now come back around to the side of our character here. Alright, so we can see. And what we want to do now is to pin both the right and left foot, so we need to be in full body mode. I've already got the right foot pinned here, but come down and pin the left foot with nothing else pinned in there at all. Okay. Then we want to select the lower torso, so up the top here, and we want to use the move tool, and we're going to move it forward 6 studs. So up the top here, change this to 6 and hit enter, and then with the blue handle, move it forward very slowly until your character moves. Alright, so that's probably gone a bit too far, so I'll just undo that. It's a little bit touchy, the movement in Studio, so if you want to do it manually, that could be okay. However, let's turn that off and we'll just do it manually without trying to move studs, and move forward till he bends his right knee to about 90 degrees like this. Okay? And that should be pretty good. Now what I want you to do is take his right hand, so come down, select right hand, and then rotate, and we're going to rotate it towards his head. So just make sure you grab the right one, which if you come to the front you'll see it's the red one, and we want to rotate it 20 degrees, so we'll say 20, and grab the red one and move it back towards his head just slightly like that, so it moves one notch, and then let it go. And lastly, we want to pin the upper torso, so find your upper torso here and pin that, and we're going to move the left hand away from the body. So if we come down to left hand here and move, and we'll move around this side or to the front so you can see what's happening, and click the move tool on his left hand. Sorry, it's been a bit touchy. Alright, move tool, and we're going to move it about 4 studs. So I'll just move it away slightly like this, till it's about straight. Okay, so he's going to move his hand back and forward slightly. Now that we have 2 keyframes, you can come down the bottom here and come back to the beginning and play, and you'll see he's moved from first position to second position. Alright, now as I said before, this is a looping animation, so we want to make sure that the first keyframe ends up being the last keyframe. So now come down to the first keyframe, left click on it so it's blue, right click, and then copy selected, and come up to the 1 position at the very end here. So you can move the scrubber up there to 1, or just here and right click down in the timeline and paste the keyframe so that it's in 1. Now you can also drag these as well if you left click and drag on the keyframe. Alright, but put it on 1. Now that we have first position, second, and back to first, we can now turn on our loop and let's play our animation. And you'll see Alright, we've got our basic idle animation happening. Alright, so if you're happy with how that is looking, alright, so I'm quite happy with that. It's and you can play around with it a little bit more if you like. Perhaps you don't like how the hand moves too far. You might want to make that less. You can also move the keyframes closer together if you want it to be quicker, or make the animation slower by changing it to 2 seconds long, and he would move much slower. Alright, but you can experiment with that. So you can stop that there. We do want to leave the loop on, and we're going to come over to the 3 dots for a start and click on Save for a start. So Save, click on the 3 dots again, and we're going to set the animation priority. So come down to Set Animation Priority, and you have a choice down here of all of these, and we're going to set this to be idle for the time being. So click on Idle to set its priority, and then right down the bottom, click on the 3 dots again, Optimize Keyframes, and you should have a window that sort of comes up with like this, and click on OK. So basically what that does is removes, say we move just the left hand, but it saved all that information for every other body part that didn't move, and that's taking up extra space and processing power. So what this does is actually removes everything that wasn't moved, so that the animation is trimmed down to be as small as possible, basically. So just click on OK. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to publish this to Roblox. So left click on the 3 dots again and come up to Publish to Roblox. Now you might have to wait a second. Now mine has been doing this lately, where this sort of appears up here like this. What you want to do is down the bottom, just resize the window slightly, and it should do this. Okay, just come back to how it should be. Make sure you've got your title in here. Add a description if you like. So this is an idle sword animation. And go ahead and click on Submit. Once you've done that, you should have this confirmation that it has been successfully submitted, and you see we have this ID here. So you can copy this if you want immediately. However, just go ahead and click on Close, and I'll show you where to get it from within Studio. So Close, and we also want to now get out of Animation Editor. So come up and left click on Animation Editor, and we'll bring up our Explorer and Properties window so that we can come back into Studio to continue working. Alright, now when you, for this next section, when you equip a tool, there's a specific animation that plays. And in your rig here, if you find the Animate folder and drop down and scroll right down, you'll find these ones on Tool, and it's Tool None. That is the one that will play when you equip a tool. So if you expand this once again, you'll find Tool None Anim, and if you left click on that, the animation ID is down here in the properties. So what we want to do is change this ID to be the one that we just created. So up here, click on Home and then Toolbox, and then click on Inventory in the toolbox, and the drop down here will have animations in it. So My Animations, and you want to find the one that we just created. So this is my sword idle video, and then left click on the plus, and down here on the 3 dots, left click on that, and you see Copy Asset ID. So go ahead and click on that, then come over to the Tool None, so it's selected, and in the Animation ID, so it's all blue, and paste in there, so Command or Control V, right, and you should have that number drop in the box and hit Enter. Right, we can then close our toolbox over here. Now I'll show you 2 ways in order to get this into your character to test straight away, and this is the easiest way. We just change this in the dummy that's standing here in the workspace. So we're going to left click on the Animate folder, right click and copy that, then come right down the bottom to our starter player, click on Starter Character Scripts, right click and paste into. And effectively what this will do is when the character loads in, when we test in a moment, this script here with everything in it will overwrite the one that's being loaded in, and we should be able to test with our sword. So make sure your sword is in your starter pack here. We'll bring up our output window so that we can see if there's any errors. There shouldn't be, we haven't got any code. Alright, and click on File and Save, and let's play. Right, I'm loaded in the game and I have my sword down here, so when I come down and click on that now, you should see your new animation playing. Right, and if I put it away, it'll stop. And if I bring it out, it'll play. Now, one thing that's happening is if you try to run now with this, it'll just stay like this. So obviously, if you wanted to have your sword and move with it, you would probably need to create a moving with sword animation, so he moves his feet. And then if you went ahead and coded the actual tool to lunge and slash to use the sword, then that would also be part of fighting. Another thing you might want to think about is to add a strafe in here, which I'll do a video about in the future. And that will let the player face the one direction instead of spinning around like this. They'll keep facing the one direction. However, for this video, I think that is well and truly enough. And you have created a idle animation for holding a sword. So as I said, I'd show you two ways in order to put this into your character. That was the easiest way that I just showed you then. However, if I remove that out of the character, right, or I can just right click on it and disable it, so it can just sit in there, won't do anything. You can do it in a script up here as well. So if we add a script to serve a script service, I'll just stop the game running, and alright, and up here and server script service, add a script, and we'll add the player service. So players equals game get service, and we'll add players, and then right below this create a tool none ID. Sorry, it needs to be, or we'll do it like this, ID equals, and then RBX asset ID with a colon and 2 backslashes, and then we need to paste that from the toolbox. Grab your tool animation ID again, so copy the asset ID and paste it just after this last backslash there. Then down below here, to make sure the character is loaded, we will write our players entering the game like this. So players.player added and connect. And we're going to write a function just above this. So a local function on player added and pass in the player. So you can take just the name of this and put it in here. And then we'll add a second function just up above that. So local function on character added and pass in the character. So inside of our on player added, put the line player dot character appearance loaded, and then a colon and connect, and we're going to add our on character added in here. And now what we'll do is get the character's humanoid. So local humanoid equals character, and then wait for child, and we're waiting for the humanoid, local animate script equals character wait for child and animate. So that's the one that we copied just before. And right below this, one line which will be animate script dot tool none. So make sure you get the capitalization right here. Dot tool none anim dot animation capital ID equals, and then this up the top here. So tool none ID. So effectively what this does, I'll just get rid of these windows. We are loading the player in first down here, and what it's doing is waiting for the character appearance to load first before it runs the actual character added script, which effectively really cuts down on errors occurring. And then we wait to make sure the humanoid is actually in the workspace first, okay, and then we get the animate folder and we change the ID. And you can do this for each player that entered the game. So remember that if we go ahead and play this now, it should do exactly the same thing as the animate that I disabled just before. So when I click here, it's working. Alright, I know that was quite a long video. However, I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of that. And I look forward to seeing you in future videos where we can do more animations. I'll see you there. If you found this video useful, subscribe now. For more information about my online courses, go to mrbrendanross.com.